Hi, everyone. I'm Don Rooney.
And I'm John Timpane.
Welcome to the Musical Inner Tube, the podcast born out of a mistake.
We once meant to introduce a soothing musical interlude, but we said soothing musical inner tube, and the name stuck.
On this podcast, we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, jobs, hobbies, and passions.
Difference makers who really make a difference. And today on the Musical Inner Tube, we are joyful and grateful to have with us Ross Gay. If you go to his website, you'll find this introduction. Ross Gay is interested in joy. Ross Gay wants to understand joy. Ross Gay is curious about joy. Ross Gay studies joy. Something like that. And that, even down to that last line of sort of self-deprecation, is a great introduction to our guest today. Ross is an award-winning writer who has made joy, attention, and gratitude his great themes in several glittering books of poetry and essays. His latest collection of essays is titled The Book of More Delights, a sequel to his best-selling The Book of Delights. Ross Gay, it is a delight to welcome you to the Musical Inner Tube.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you. Good to see you all.
And in the interests of full disclosure, I have to admit that Ross and I once did an independent study together when I was teaching at Lafayette College, and I managed not to do anything for his poetry, not to teach him a single dang thing, and I'm proud to say it. So, Ross, everything you're doing in spite of me. I love it. Listen, I want to talk about, first of all, a profile of you that appeared in the gardening section of the New York Times. How the heck did that happen? How does a poet get in the gardening section? How did that line up? It's so unusual.
It is. And first, I want to say you did, in fact, teach me many things. I was, when I met you, I was right at the beginning of, I was on the cusp of failing out of college, and I was really uninterested in college, and I was just like really uninterested and probably kind of depressed. And I met you and Lee Upton and Ed Kearns, and had people who kind of showed me what I might love. So anyway,
it's so odd to hear you say you're not interested in something when you are a poet of being interested and paying attention, totally, and all those things. But the gardening section, I mean, you're not just a poet, you're a gardener, and you're not just a gardener, you're a poet. I'd love to hear about that interrelationship.
Yeah. So the way that, I guess that happened through a publicist, through my press or something. That being said, it was sweet, primarily because I got to have a conversation. Oh man, her name just popped out of my head, but Margaret Roach, there's a show called A Way to Garden. It's a podcast. It's another podcast, and it's a great podcast. And I've been listening to that for, I don't know, I probably started listening to that back in like 2017, 2018, when I started writing, very, intensely about my garden. So it was neat to talk to her, cause it's fun to talk, gardeners like talking to gardeners, and I have sort of fully become a gardener in my adulthood. And, probably like something that feels interesting about it, maybe to this conversation too, is that the garden is such a sort of site for all of this kind of imaginative, metaphorical, et cetera, kind of thinking and practicing. So that's one of the things that I love about getting in the garden. There's just so many things that I learned about writing process. I certainly learned about life, about living and being life.
Interesting.
But many things that I learned about writing in the process of gardening too.
I would say too, Ross, as sort of a preview, the Book of Delights and the Book of More Delights are just basically essays that you write during a year of things that occur to you or things that happen to you during a year. And in the Book of More Delights, you do have an essay about the day your bike breaks down and you have to walk across town to get to a coffee shop to do some writing. And on the way, you encounter, I think I counted it at one time. It must have been about 5 fig trees full of figs, which you then exchange with friends for other fruits. And again, the description of the figs and the fig trees is very gardening oriented. I mean, you there that you get a great idea of what a fig tree can produce. But again, that's sort of taken as sort of an essay on interacting with the world and with other people.
And this is, I'm going to anticipate John's question too for an example. That, an example of how the writing life is sort of inspired by the gardening life and probably vice versa. But that walk, so just for your listeners, so it's the Book of Delights and the Book of More Delights are books of, they're collections of essays. Every essay is an inquiry or a wondering about something that delights me. So I write them every day, and every day I sort of think about something that delighted me. I write them by hand and I write them quickly. They're always like quick 30 minutes to sort of draft them. That walk itself, and this one is, it's called Shortcut to the Shortcut. And really what the essay is this long essay about me walking all around Bloomington in a way, like the first thing I'm trying to do is find like a quiet coffee shop where I can like sit down and do some writing, where I won't be, happily interrupted by my friends. And on the way, I pass all kinds of friends, and many of them have gardens and a few of them have fig trees. One of them, actually, I should say, I saw in the co-op last night, and she was like, "Hey, it was so nice to see myself in your book." But anyway, in the process of that, I sort of, Michael offers me a couple figs. My friend Kate, I mentioned that the day before she had given me a carrot or some carrots. I walk down and some other friends offer these figs. I get pears on the way that I give to my friend Alex, who gives me a bunch of pawpaws, some of which I then drop off at my friends who gave me the figs, who tried to hoist on me, give on me some cookies. And I'm like, okay, But I think one of the things that the garden sort of, or that amble through through towns, but it was also like these gardens as these touch points, is a kind of abundance. There's a kind of abundance. And so one of the things that a garden sort of offers is this, the perpetual potential of enoughness, which inclines us to share. I feel like that is absolutely the case. But not only that, I think part of that essay that is so lovely to me is that I'm just walking through this thing, and I'm again and again, I'm being sort of cared for. People being like, "Hey, do you need something? Hey, would you like something? Hey, take some of this. Hey, I got extra. Hey," and it encourages me or inclines me to do the same thing. That abundance that a garden is always sort of the potential of, it's the same thing. It inclines us to sort of distribute, to share. And the last thing that I want to say is that when you're in a garden, I feel like when you're gardening as life, not gardening as a kind of dominating force, but gardening as a participant and collaborator and even like sort of supplicant, you are always attending to how much makes everything. You're always attending to like, if not for this, if not for the sun, if not for the rain, if not for the beetles, if not for the worms, if not for the bees, if not, on and on and on and on, if not for the decaying, everything turning into everything else, you would not have any of it. It would not exist.
Yes.
And that to me feels like a way that I love to try to be a writer in the world, which is to say that I love to honor to the best of my ability. I'm always trying to do it better and better and better. All of these voices by which my voice came into being. And John, yours is one of them. So, et cetera.
Oh, I think of gardening, and we're all writers here, and we often wonder, where we get our ideas from. But gardening is like writing in so many ways. You've just underlined one of them, which is you have to pay attention.
You got to pay attention.
You can't just like throw a bunch of seeds in the dirt and run like hell. You actually have to come back.
Yeah.
You have to tend them.
Yeah.
You've got to prune them. I'm bad at that. I'm so lazy. But,
yeah.
But paying attention is really such a central aspect of gardening. It's almost what you go to do first.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not about spades and picks and shovels so much, but it's just looking around and what's going on.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. That's, people will often ask me like, like the question of a version of like, have you always been a good payer of attention or something like that? And I'm like, I don't know. But what I do know is that being in a garden trains that muscle. Absolutely. Being in the garden.
It's, if you don't notice that something is starting to turn a certain color you don't want, let's say brown in my case.
Yeah.
You've got to act on that almost as soon as you see it. You can't save it because we're all in the throes of time here, and nothing's more in the throes of time than a growing plant.
Yes.
And you have to act. So attention it becomes sort of an imperative to do something.
Yeah.
Based on what you've seen.
Yeah.
And again, this is just an extended metaphor about what writing's about. But I know as a gardener, and I'm not like you have, it looks like just a huge garden, several times larger than mine.
Well, did those pictures our little plot is a 0.1 acre. It's it's like a little city lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But they really did. We're talking about the New York Times photograph now of your garden. There is one shot, I guess, taken from its longest side that makes it look massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I immediately said, oh man, I'm glad I just have a little postage stamp of a place. I'd never get around to half of that.
Yeah, totally.
Here's a question. I love the quote unquote rules that you just enunciated for what you are doing. Did the rules arise from the thing, or did you impose them? Or I'm just wondering what came first, the rules or the practice?
Great question. I think I set up those rules first. I remember I was actually at a writer's or an artist retreat in Italy. And I was having like a lovely day, and I was like in a moment of delight. And I thought, oh, I should write a little essay about this. And then very quickly it was sort of given to me to write them every day for a year. And I think so that do it every day for a year. That came as the first sort of constraint. And then the second constraint, I think, was, which probably didn't arrive at that same moment, because that was the moment. That was the thing where the project got born. The second one was to do them in 30 minutes. I think I realized that as I was sort of getting ready, because it was like, I knew I'd do it for my birthday. It was near my birthday. So I had like 3 or 4 weeks to kind of decide how I was going to do this. And I knew that if I gave myself the 30 minutes thing, it would help me do it every day. Partly because I wasn't an essay writer at the time. I mean, I'd written plenty of essays, but I wasn't an essay writer. And as a consequence, I think, maybe I'm wrong about this, I'll just say it. I feel like I'm inclined, as with my poems, to take a kind of, they move very slowly. They move very slowly. And if I were to sort of have the same approach that I have to writing my poems, which I think of as a kind of like very patient. If I were to have that same approach to writing this daily essay situation, I wouldn't get any essays. I'd write 5 essays, and they'd all, and then, like they'd be pretty good, or maybe they'd be like, because I'd be aspiring for a kind of excellence,
Yeah, right.
Or I don't know if excellence is the right word, but maybe. And to eliminate that, to be like, no, just 30 minutes. You're not going to be great. You're not going to be brilliant. You're going to like do something quickly, and then you'll see what it is. That came before my birthday. And then I think very quickly I realized if I was going to do this, I was going to have to be very portable into doing it. So to write them by hand meant it was going to be, I could carry my notebooks around. And so, so they came before the writing.
Interesting too, that you have another essay all about choosing notebooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And about how the right notebook and the right pen and the right equipment get you started in a particular direction.
Yeah, totally. The last book, the Book of More Delights, I wrote entirely I don't think I have any on me, but entirely in grade books that I stole from my from my place of employ.
Yeah, exactly. They're there. I mean, they're there. Why not use them for
I
almost
know.
anything?
Use them for
You
something
know?
good, you know.
And now we're talking about grade books because Ross is a teacher. And if you need grade books, you could just go into the office of the department sometimes, and there'll be a whole
Yeah.
stack, and you just grab a couple
Yes,
if you need
exactly.
them. That's so ironic,
It
isn't
is.
it?
I know.
So you have this practice that these rules. They commit you to being immediate. What's going to happen is going to happen right there. And yet a lot of these seem finished. Did you go back to them? Or did they, can you talk to me about how you rounded them out? Because nobody expects you, if you're going to write a book, nobody expects you to just throw anything in the book. Obviously, you're going to work at them. So did you work on some of these down the line?
Every one of them. Every one of them. I wonder if there's any of them I wonder if there's a single one that was 90% done. I wonder. I'd be very surprised, you know, because I can say this, like and this is a teaching thing too. Like I'm a decent first drafter. You know, there might be things that I can kind of do just by having written so much, in a first draft that are pretty good. But I do almost all my exercises with my students. Like we all do the same exercises. And so I have we all have the wonderful opportunity periodically for them to be like, I'll read what I wrote and they'll be like, okay, why are you teaching this? You know? And it's such a gift. It's such a gift because I'm like, yeah, I'm just like, I'm like a little bit better maybe than you all because I've been at it for like 30 years longer. But I can fucking revise. I know how to revise, you know, and then, that takes a little while. And so, so the deal is I'm even like reading through this book that I wrote last semester when I was on this book tour, and it's called Book Tour. And I'm just like transcribing it. And a lot of it is just awful. It's just like, God, But as I kind of tool, the stuff in it is there. But as I tool around, I know that if I have enough time, I can like pull this thing together from it, and it might be, 1/3 of the words that it is now. Those delights. Yeah. Like I said, I'd be really surprised if more than 10% were in the ballpark of okay, which is also to say that, it's also like, to say that it takes me a while to even know like what the essay wants to be, So I'm just sort of prompting. I'm just sort of like in a way noting something, prompting something, some initial feelings and stuff like that. Maybe some initial sort of rhythms or something like that. But it's going to take a while often for me to understand what the questions of the essay are really about. Also, something that I learned with writing the first book is that I was, there's a kind of syntax and diction to those books, a kind of, I think, a kind of pace of thought. Like the 30 minutes thing actually encourages a kind of rapidity of thought.
Interesting.
And yeah, and that's a kind of, it shows in a kind of syntax. And sometimes some people will be like long ass sentences, like, cause I'm like, cause I gotta be like, well, why is it that I love high five so much? And that took me about a month or maybe 2 or 3 months to learn how to listen to and honor that kind of thinking. And I remember as I was revising them, as I was transcribing them into the computer, this is the first book in 2016. As I was transcribing them into the computer, I was trying to make them very good. And I was killing them. I was just like ruining these essays. And I realized that I had to wait and learn actually like what they wanted to be. And partly I learned what they wanted to be by reading them out loud.
Exactly. Yes. Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how often I was in classes about poetry writing at Lafayette and Elsewhere where I would say, you got to read your stuff aloud. You have to read other people's stuff aloud. It's sort of meant to be read aloud. Most poets, some poets don't care, but most poets will hope that you will read the stuff aloud. It becomes one of the pleasures of writing that you find the nuggets that, that you really should work with. So that actually writing about pleasure becomes another pleasure, doesn't it?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Sort of a circle.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. And it's funny. I have enough of a kind of, I read often. I give a lot of readings. And so I have a very strong relationship to how my things sound in the air already, which doesn't mean that I always am going to, there are things that I write that I feel like are difficult enough that, if I were reading them aloud, I might have to like slow down and like pause and like, coach us all along. But I feel like you said, coming up as a poet, absolutely. The first thing you're doing is like writing a couple lines and then you hear it out loud. You speak it out loud.
John, Ross has a copy of his book, The Book of More Delights. Is there anything that you'd want him to pick out and read as part of this too?
Well, let's stay true to the sort of immediacy of Ross's practice. Ross, open the book, flap the pages, stick your finger in there, and read the poem that you touched. Don't look.
Okay, I got it.
He's looking, ladies and gentlemen. Now he's
no. I just cracked it open.
You're a cheater.
I cracked it open.
Okay. All right. All right.
This is so great because I don't know if I've ever read this one out loud. That's great. I never in a million years would have chosen this one. It's called Not This Dog. Today we are babysitting Georgia's two dogs, Nico and Millie. Nico is a stately, protective, self-possessed, stiff, mournful brindle bantamweight. And Millie is an anxious, rambunctious, pawing little muscle ball whose imagination seems always to be ablaze. At this moment, they are curled together at the foot of the bed, down near my feet, and Tucker, their older brother, or maybe he's their uncle, a much smaller guy, but still their boss somehow, is at the other side of the bed, crying a little bit about whatever he's dreaming. I hope those are cries of delight. I hope he's dreaming of dunking a basketball. 20 minutes ago, when I was making my second cup of coffee, all three of them, like a team, walked one after the other to the one water bowl and lapped, each one with a slightly different cadence and volume to their lap. As Nico, a truly distinguished and debonair creature if ever there was one, walked past me after drinking behind his two buddies, strutting almost at having commingled so nonchalant, it occurred to me that it seemed not even to cross his mind, sophisticate though he is, to ask for his own water bowl. It got me thinking about Nico's tolerance for putting his nose and tongue to things I might prefer not to, and how all of the dogs have been known to chew up dead and disgusting things, and that Millie time to time gobbles and defecates dirty socks out of the laundry, which mostly do not come out on their own, by which I mean her mother, Georgia, has had to extract these dirty socks, now somewhat dirtier having been passed through her, the dog's, intestinal tract, gagging, the mother, the whole time. I'm not saying they don't have their issues. One might say eating socks is an issue. But what is not their issue, and for this I think on their behalf, how lucky, I think, this is what they mean by prelapsarian. It's filth, or being filthy. Or, and maybe this is the real rub, is they don't even have the concept of being perceived as such. In fact, they seem not yet to have even learned the concepts and are a little bit like gross little grubby human children this way, who are also, so often, I know it's a cliche to say so, but it's true, our teachers.
That is so wonderful. You got to do it again. Do it again.
Do it again.
No, not the same one. Just
do another. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Do it again. That was so wonderful. Got to have you do it again.
Okay. So I rarely read this one too. This is called The Courtesy of Truckers. I got caught having to pee pretty bad with no exit or rest stop in sight. And so I pulled over on the side of the busy highway with a rather petite shoulder. And as I was relieving myself, intermittently watching the plants shivering on the side of the road and the traffic roaring by over my shoulder, I noticed how every single trucker, this was a trucker-rich road, by which I mean every single one, managed their rigs over to the passing lane. And some of them, because it was a busy road, had to do so nimbly, balletically, all to give me and my relief a little breathing room. The trucker's quick and urgent wide berth for the shouldered car, which might also be a shouldered truck or tractor trailer or someone being pulled over or an ambulance, Reminds me of the way in some of the mosh pits I'd be in back in the day. Fugazi, Shudder to Think, Rage Against the Machine, Fishbone. Fishbone 8, maybe 10 times. Fishbone today if I could get a ticket. Where if someone went down, you immediately scooped them to their feet and made sure they were okay. Eye contact, hand signals, thumbs up, or any of the zillion other ways humans can communicate "I'm good" and "thank you" to one another. And if you were on the other side of the mosh pit, you immediately went from moshing to boxing out your fellow moshers so no one got stumped. Never mind, most moshers back in the day, some of them probably on anti-jock principle, did not know what boxing out meant. Regardless, when someone went down, they boxed out like Dennis Rodman or Charles Barkley. Truckers are also really astute at flashing their lights to oncoming traffic to mean "heads up cop," or "heads up accident," or "heads up washing machine," or "heads up family of deer meandering cutely in the middle of the road." Those flashing lights are another kind of boxing out, I guess. Additionally, for the most part, truckers who, lest we forget, keep everything going, i.e., thank a trucker, know not to gum up the passing lane. And when they are gumming it up and you're just starting to get frustrated and itchy and thinking, what the hell are they doing up there? And time to pull your head out of your ass, bozo, you will see a sign, often blinking, the better to alert yourself to yourself, that says truckers left lane only. Very occasionally at night when I'm tired but with miles to go before I sleep, I'll let myself slip into you might get there.
Name drop.
I'll let myself slip into the fantasy that a truck behind me is a demon truck, like that Stephen King movie. And let it be said that Stephen King kind of ruined a lot of shit. Tell me you wouldn't be afraid to stay the winter for free in a big, beautiful, empty ski lodge with lots of food and these days probably Wi-Fi and a pool. Tell me you're not a little bit afraid of homecoming or prom or whatever. Tell me you're not a little bit afraid of big, cuddly, slobbery dogs or clowns or 57 Chevys or cornfields or your pets or your kids. See what I'm saying? Anyway, as far as I know, it hasn't happened yet, the demon truck thing, but something that happens frequently, particularly if I have extended a courtesy to a truck, by which I mean a trucker. Maybe I let them in front of me in the left lane when we're climbing a hill because the truck in front of them in the right was really huffing and puffing. Maybe I let them in as the road went from 3 lanes to 2 or 2 lanes to 1. That trucker, if it's nighttime, once you get back in front of them, will often flip their lights on and off a few times in a gesture that the first time it happened to me, I thought maybe I'd messed up and I was being reprimanded or, oh God, I hope I didn't just sick the demon truck on myself. But now I know it's an acknowledgement of my unremarkably good deed. It's yet another way we have of saying thank you.
We'll return to our podcast in just a moment, but first, here's a lovely musical interlude.
Ross Gay teaches at Indiana University at Bloomington, Indiana, and in the low residency MFA program at Drew University in New Jersey.
Among his books of poetry are Bringing the Shovel Down, Be Beholding, that's the winner of the Pan American Literary Gene Stein Award, and Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, which won the 2015 National Book Critics Circle Award and the 2016 Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award.
His essay collections include the New York Times bestseller, The Book of Delights, Inciting Joy, and his latest, the Book of More Delights.
To learn more about Ross Gay, check out his website at rossgay, all one word, .net.
And now, back to the musical inner tube, already in progress.
When you wrote the first Book of Delights and then you moved on to the second, I'm going to throw something out here that I got from reading both. In the first Book of Delights, a lot of your essays, you were learning something, or there was at least some sort of a germ of an idea that you wanted the reader to come away with.
Yeah.
And in the second Book of Delights, it's more like, hey, this neat thing happened to me.
Uh-huh.
But it's very much on a lighter scale, very much on a it still teaches you a lesson, or it still gets across the idea that you want to impart, but it does it in a very much more casual way, just as a reader. That's what I picked up.
Yeah.
So did you pick that up as a writer, that as you go to the second Book of Delights, you kind of had a handle on what you wanted to do in the first one, and you were able to do it a little better in the second one?
I love that observation. I don't know. Partly these conversations are so useful to me because I don't really know what they're doing. I don't quite know what they're doing until I sort of observe the observations of what they're doing. The thing that I wanted to be very conscientious of was that I don't want to get too good at it, and that's one of the troubles with like repeating a kind of set of constraints. I go, okay, I got these constraints. Now I know how to write a thing in 30 minutes. Now I know how to move it. Now I know how to revise them. Now I know that, they have to have a kind of whatever the thing, like it's an arrival or something like that they can become a kind of more like a formal exercise than a kind of the thing that I want, which is a kind of transformative experience of thinking, through language or something. So that observation, I love that observation. I'm going to like think about it, more. I feel like for sure it took me a little while in the first book to realize like, oh, what makes this interesting to me is not when I describe a delight, but when describing is part of it, but when I wonder about a delight, when I wonder about a thing, so that the question is the first thing. It's not about professing, it's about wondering. And I know that about my writing. So to bring that about the reason that I write, that's the reason that I write questions. So to bring that understanding, which was a fully formed understanding, to this second book, makes me think I was inclined to sort of still value that process, and I'd want to revise toward that. But what you said is sort of observational thing of it. It's just like such a great question. I can't wait to go back in there. I think of some of these essays as being, harder in a way, like they would take me a while to write, and then I would just have to rip it apart and say, I've been trying for a long time to say this thing, but I can't say it. So let me say it like this,
Okay. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Well done.
I think it's such a great point that you're making. And I know this as a musician as well as a person who tries to write verse. You never want to know too much about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to talk about that to other folks because there are many lines of work where you got to know what you're doing. If I'm fixing your car, I got to know what I'm doing. Now, fixing a car and knowing how a car works, that's amazing. I'd love to have that skill and do not.
Yeah.
But then when you come to the arts or many of the arts, you need to let something emerge out of what's going on. You don't necessarily want to question it and pin it down.
Yeah.
You're allowing it to be non-rational, right?
Yeah.
For a while. And that's what wondering is allowing something to be strange and hard to capture and really sort of strange to you. It's a very difficult thing to explain why that's good. And it's, talk more about why it's good. Why is it good not to know? Because a lot of people are made very insecure when we say this, that it's good not to know, at least to a certain extent, what you're doing. Yeah. But it makes people very insecure. Like, that would drive me crazy. I could never do that.
Yeah. I think there's even like I think there's an ethical component to questioning, to not sort of imposing one's understanding. And I think in the most basic way, or like the most sort of palpable way, is sort of like in relationships, like, to presume that we know everything, or even like most things about the closest people to us, is to eliminate the possibility of knowing each other, and it's also sort of the guarantee that we're going to be shitty to one another, and I feel like, this kind of thing that I learned in like couples therapy. It's just like how often I go around assuming I know what my partner thinks, feels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, And then I proceed with that understanding that is in fact a lie.
It's already wrong.
It's already wrong, and it's just like not great. And I feel like that's one reason to sort of like, to value the question. But in terms of a writerly sense, for me, the reason I write, like I said it before, but I'll say it, say a little bit more about it, is not because I know something. I mean, I might have chops, that I've cultivated over years, but I don't know anything. And in fact, the reason that my writing might be at all interesting, I think, to myself for sure, but maybe to someone else, is that I'm able to sort of meditate on what I don't know and share it and possibly join it with someone, with a reader's not knowing, So, in class, I'm always like, it's the question. It's not the, and even like in a writing, I often get to talk to young writers and I'm like, the thesis is the wrong thing. Thesis, it's just bullshit. If you're talking about thinking, if you're talking about proving or obedience or all of these other horrific things, yeah, have a thesis and carry it out.
Well, isn't it interesting that usually in school, when we're taught to write essays, we're taught to have a thesis and then prove it.
Yes.
But actually, that's the reverse of what really happens. The thesis is at the end of your exploration. It's what you do. Oh, wow, I've discovered this. This is my idea.
Right.
And what is the next thing you have to do is reverse the whole process.
I know. Isn't it funny? It's sort of like there's some mode of thought or mode of being or something that instead of allowing that inquiry to be the sort of beautiful thing, oh, this is the inquiry, and then you arrived at something, you changed. Oh, I found this new thing out. There's some way that parts of the educational system want to refute that and want us to sort of, well, okay, so hide the fact that you changed.
Yeah.
and foreground the fact that you asserted.
Yes.
And that's
very male.
Very male.
Very categorical.
And this sort of blows that whole write what you know out of the water, doesn't it? Write what you're interested in, but that you don't know yet.
Yeah. And what you know is going to inform, of course, what you know is going to inform what you don't know. It's going to provide the ground for you to sort of even attend to what you don't know.
When the hell did this get this metaphysical?
I know a lot about basketball. I know a good bit about gardening. I know some stuff about, whatever, how to swing kettlebell and something about American poetry. I know some things.
Sure. About spoons and bees
exactly.
and gardens. Right. And people singing and your mother baking cookies.
No, yeah. But those things are sort of much less significant to me, actually. They're beautiful and I'm grateful for them, but they're actually much less significant in terms of my writing process, probably anyway, than what they're going to permit me to attend to that I do not know.
And again, if I can continue this mind blow thing here, if all three of us are assigned by the teacher, okay, write about this, we're all coming at it from our backgrounds and from what we know and from what we've been through.
Yeah.
And you will get 3 completely different essays on the same topic based on whatever we bring to it. So that's, I think, the value of having that background, what it allows you to see out of a particular topic or a particular thing.
It's also beautiful, the thing of like, that a poem is not one thing, it's not, and it's not, it's, the same poem is going to be 3 poems to us, but it's also that over the course, my experience is that over the course of my life, I relate to other people's poems and my own poems very differently, and how lovely is that too,
Absolutely.
If I know that I'm 49 years old, I've experienced that enough times to know that, my understanding is always changing.
And as a writer, when you get something like what I did earlier, when I said, oh, well, this is kind of what I got out of your books, and it wasn't something that occurred to you, I mean, that happens a lot where a writer or a filmmaker puts a book or a movie out and somebody says, oh, that meant this. And the person who created it said, I had no idea that wasn't my intent at all. but it's whatever you take from it, I guess.
And you know that we're always sort of doing things that are invisible to us.
We can't know what's up. It's so hard to describe this that we cannot. If we do know what's up, that's going to be a different dog. I'm not saying it'll be terrible, but it's the stuff that we couldn't possibly know. And when you go back after many years to stuff you wrote when you were younger, whether it got published or not, it hits you right away. The distance between you and that person.
Yeah.
And you know, in good and bad ways, but it also is very exciting because you've changed, the poem has changed, the world has changed, and that's something else to learn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's something that I find, like, I'll go back to looking at my first book or something, and it makes me, one, I don't feel like, I feel like, oh, there's things that I wouldn't say in that way again, but it makes me wonder about the person who wrote that book. You know, it just makes me like, oh, wow. Like, and then be like, oh, okay, yeah, you were going through this, you were going through that, you were thinking about this, you were reading this, blah, blah, blah. But it makes me wonder. It doesn't make me, I don't have it. They become stranger to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They become stranger to me.
Well, thank you, Ross Gay.
You're welcome.
What a great way to spend a half an hour. I don't suppose you're planning another collection, or are you?
I kind of like the idea of doing it every 5 years. So I have a little bit of time to wait for that and to decide about that. But in the meantime, I think the next book I'm working on is really explicitly about the garden.
Fantastic. Well, Ross Gay, thank you for coming on the Musical Inner Tube. We have seldom had such a poetic time. Thank you for. I hope we have you on before another 5 years has passed.
Yeah, same here. It was lovely to see you. Lovely to see
Thanks.
you.
It was great to talk to you, Ross, and my brain hurts from thinking so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Inner Tube.
Hey, let us know how we're doing. Send us an email at musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com.
Do you know someone with a great story to tell? Let us know. Send us an email or log in to our website, musicalinnertube.com, and click on the microphone in the lower right-hand corner to leave us a voicemail.
And while you're on our website, take a few minutes to listen to past episodes of the podcast. They're all there, along with pictures and biographies of our guests, blog posts, and lots more.
And as always, our thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing us with our theme music.